In my previous video, I discussed the vast sums of money laundered by the CIA and other government agencies, as well as the complicity of most members of Congress in hiding this money from the public. Later in this video is my interview with a top CIA agent and assassin. First, we need to discuss the background that led to the interview. I became aware of the agent named Roberto Ferreira from another person, a CIA operative I met in 2003. After numerous conversations and resistance, he provided me with documentation of the CIA's role in smuggling drugs and his role in laundering the proceeds. The primary document is a 22-page FBI report given to me by the CIA operative, who, for security reasons, I refer to as Francis Marion. According to the heading of the report, it was produced by their Internal Intelligence Division at the request of the late Senator Ted Kennedy and is classified top secret. The last page, page 23, which identifies the FBI official who compiled it, was not provided to Francis Marion. However, the official is identified in other documents as a college classmate of Ted Kennedy. The first paragraphs of the report set the stage. Dear Senator, per your oral requests of June 5, 1989, for a full report on the Japanese, Singapore, New Zealand, Kentucky connection, what follows is a complete and thorough investigation. It is based on all available files of the Bureau, as well as any top-secret confidential or personnel files from the DoD, the CIA, and the departments of the Navy, Army, and Marine Corps. I have also reviewed borrowed microfilm records of the World War II Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. If this top-secret report were to be leaked in any portion, Senator, you understand that our agents planted in the above agencies would be exposed and over 15 years' work would be in total disarray. Due to the nature of the one common link in the total operation, which will be outlined, we have interpreted your request to include an in-depth investigation into the present assignment of Major General Robert L. Ferreira, as well as his total work from February 2, 1942 to the present. That investigation is as complete as possible, given the total silence we have encountered whenever we have as much as mentioned his name. The report continues. During the tenure of Richard Helms as director of the Central Intelligence Agency, decisions were made by the director, with implied approval of the Oval Office, to draft a blueprint and put into motion a plan by which the CIA could have as much funds as needed without knowledge of Congress. This would accomplish the dual purpose of carrying out clandestine and covert operations without the clearance of Congress. Director Helms wrote a memo to the Oval Office, which we intercepted, in which he stated in part, if Congress or any other uninformed do-gooders ever become aware of this operation, this agency and its director will invoke the 1949 Central Intelligence Agency Act. That act exempts the CIA from all laws requiring the disclosure of functions, names, official titles, salaries, and numbers of personnel employed by the agency. Using this as a cloak of legality, Director Helms put together a team of 5 top people. The 5 experts picked were General Edward Lansdale, who ran the CIA activities in Vietnam; William Colby, who was to be put in total command of the blueprint operation when enacted; George Bush, who asked and received approval to have his top aide, Richard Armitage, be aboard; and Lieutenant Colonel Robert Ferreira, a top CIA asset, who at the time was on an assignment in the Congo on the Patrice Lumumba situation. The report states that the master plan called for the CIA to enter into the drug smuggling business in a total and complete fashion. It explains how 4 members of the Gang of 5 were selected on the basis of their special skills, as well as the duties of each member. Bush was chosen for his knowledge of China and his wartime flying ability to handle the opium from China. Armitage was brought along by Bush as his personal gopher. General Lansdale was selected to handle the distribution and collection services within the military in Vietnam. William Colby's job was to set up the runners, peddlers, pushers, collectors, as well as eliminate anyone who might prove to be uncontrollable, be they American or Vietnamese. Lieutenant Colonel Ferreira, subsequently promoted to a major general, was to use his contacts in Latin America and in the Middle East to obtain from various governments the needed drugs, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, LSD, etc. Bush was to handle the opium from China. The operation was given the name of Eagle 2 at the request of Ferreira. He felt it would be lucky to have the same code as the Eagle project he had participated in when he was with the OSS. Before the operation was really off the ground, Colby started his phase of elimination of dissidents. He did so under the code name of Phoenix. But Colby became insane with his power, and before he finished with Phoenix, over 20,000 suspects were executed and over 2,500 U.S. citizens were accused by Colby of being collaborators. They vanished. Major General Robert L. Ferreira was selected for Eagle 2 because of his varied experience as a pilot, as well as his command of over a dozen languages. Although his role with Eagle 2 was to use his contacts in Latin America and the Middle East to obtain drugs, Ferreira subsequently resigned from the operation when he discovered that the drugs were being given to U.S. servicemen and not to the North Vietnamese or the Viet Cong, as he'd been led to believe. According to the report, the CIA couldn't resist the temptation to use its enormous profits from the drug trade to place CIA-controlled people in the Japanese government. Bush personally picked an obscure party formed in 1955, bankrupt and with little membership, to back in the possible takeover of the government. But before they finally achieved power, some of over 300 billion Japanese yen from Eagle 2 profits had been funneled to them. The 70s were not a very peaceful time for the agency or the puppet of Helms, Prime Minister Tanaka. He was found with his hands in the cookie jar, making money on the side in the scandal involving Lockheed Aircraft. This was all too close to being made public, and with Prime Minister Tanaka forced to resign, the decision was made to terminate Eagle 2 and to wash away any traces. For this, George H.W. Bush was named director of the CIA from 1976 until 1977 only, so that he would have a clear way of doing away with any evidence. This was accomplished to a certain degree prior to Governor Carter assuming the presidency. It's easy to get rid of evidence by shredding documents and assassinating witnesses, of course, and the FBI report lists many instances where the government used both methods, but you can't shred $1 billion in Japanese yen, even if it's evidence against you. So, you launder it. Thus, the word was put out into the world financial circles that there was available at a great discount a certificate of deposit in yen issued by the Mitsui Bank Limited. This brought hundreds of enquiries and offers to the dozen or so agents that had knowledge of this very mysterious CD. One of these second and third rung agents was somehow put in communication with Francis Marion from Kentucky, and thus began to unfold the Kentucky connection. Francis Marion was considered by Helms to be the perfect buyer because he had to be one that had a past record of conducting financial transactions in the gray zone. Francis Marion was the consummate entrepreneur developing projects without having financial backing, never anything illegal but on the borderline. He was allowed to buy the CD because it would not do to have anyone well known within the international financial circles. The press would delve into it fully. Left unsaid was that Marion would be their fall guy if anything went wrong, which is exactly what happened. Before Marion and his people could cash the CD, the director of the CIA, Mr. Helms, decided to block Marion's attempt by accusing him of stealing the CD and thus have all papers confiscated. Everyone, except a Japanese national named Hozuki, who assisted in the scheme, would be lost in jails in the Far East forever. No trace, no record. This would have been successful, except that unknown persons came to the aid of Francis Marion, and he was allowed to leave the Mitsui Bank with the CD. Still, the Japanese government officially declared the instrument to be a stolen blank, and thus a forgery. It should be clarified that Richard Helms was the official director of the CIA between 1966 to 1973, yet he was still the secret director, at least through Bill Casey's tenure. What prompted Helms' decision to block the sale of the CD was the need to provide funds for the Contras in Nicaragua. The sale of the CD was considered too risky, so he felt that the only solution was to resume the drug trafficking operation. This time, it had to be done without the knowledge or participation of General Ferreira, because of his by now total aversion to the drug trade. Ferreira was therefore assigned to other missions by the agency to keep him in the dark. The name of the new operation was changed to Golden Triangle and placed under the control of Armitage, with the full knowledge of Bush, but not of President Ronald Reagan, nor of General Ferreira. Naturally, none of General Ferreira's drug contacts could be used either, without him becoming aware of the government's renewed drug trafficking. The new operation also required a new field operative named Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. The report then sarcastically remarks that history has now proven that Colonel North was no General Ferreira. Helms is criticized in the report for allowing Armitage to be in overall control of the renewed Eagle, referring to Armitage as the consummate double dealer and the perfect triple crosser. The Bureau estimates that Armitage amassed a sum in excess of $100 billion in gold, deposited in various countries of the Pacific Rim. Meanwhile, William J. Casey sat about establishing his own drug kingdom, with him as emperor and without consulting Helms. He also started smuggling drugs to help Colonel North obtain funds for the Contras. Casey had even named his Operation Eagle, but quickly changed the name to Black Eagle after Helms heard rumors of it. Under Casey's massive operation, tons of narcotics were allowed to enter the country as a necessary cost of the higher geopolitical objective of overturning Nicaragua's Sandinista government. But Casey was extremely careless and freewheeling. He had obtained help from the very depths of society and put one Adler Berryman SEAL in command to obtain funds for the Oliver North operation with the Contra. The report states that SEAL was the most important organizer, facilitator, and impresario of the partnership between the CIA and organized crime. The CIA even gave SEAL the funds to establish an aviation consultant business in Latin America, through which he smuggled guns to the Contra. The agency had been using SEAL since 1981 as a contact man, and he was eventually ordered to make contact with the Medellin cartel. SEAL's new partners became Pablo Escobar, George Ochoa, and Carlos Leder. It was only a matter of time before General Ferreira found out about SEAL. The general's hatred of the drug trade came to the fore after learning that SEAL was the major importer of drugs into the United States. Ferreira then asked some of his friends to do something about El Gordo, which was his nickname for SEAL. He did not know, and if he did know, he did not care that Adler Berryman SEAL, El Gordo, was in fact working for Director Casey. The general's men took care of, quote, that fat son of a bitch, close quote, on the evening of February 19, 1986 at precisely 6 p.m. Adler Berryman SEAL, aka Barry SEAL, got out of his white Cadillac in a parking lot where Ferreira had his men hide behind a dumpster. SEAL took no precautions and did not see the waiting men as he backed into the parking spot. According to witnesses, the men approached the driver's side. There were two quick bursts from the silencer-equipped MAC-10 and from an Uzi submachine gun. 96 bullets smashed into SEAL's head and body, and he was dead instantly. It was the killing of SEAL that led to the IRAN-CONTRA North scandal. When General Ferreira had SEAL eliminated, he inadvertently toppled the source of funds for the Contras. For like a domino theory, with SEAL gone, everyone started to look out for their own hides. One thing led to another until the discovery of the so-called IRAN-CONTRA North affair. Coincidentally, I met Robert Ross, the former partner of Barry SEAL. Although he didn't know Ferreira, he confirmed that it was the CIA who brought in the Colombian killers. He also stated that the machine guns used to kill SEAL came from a gun shop in Miami, owned by none other than Oliver North. Another revelation from Robert Ross was that photographs of George W. Bush and his brother Jeb Bush doing cocaine at an airport were in the trunk of SEAL's Cadillac. The trunk was empty when the police arrived. Now back to the report. General Ferreira had and still has the reputation of being totally ruthless and without mercy when he feels that he has been betrayed. A case in point involved Dr. Hugo Spadafora, Panama's former Vice Minister of Health and a mole for Ferreira. It was through Spadafora that Ferreira found out Manuel Noriega was being paid $250,000 per year by Casey as an asset for the CIA, while at the same time he was providing information to Fidel Castro. When Noriega found out Spadafora was spying for Ferreira, Noriega had Spadafora tortured to death, then dumped his body in a U.S. mail sack and mailed it to General Ferreira in Mexico City. Ferreira went undercover on his own into Panama and soon made his way into the compound of General Noriega. Once he located Noriega, he personally cut off his testes and stuffed them into Noriega's mouth. The general injected Noriega with a full dose of cocaine and left him bound in a drugged stupor. It is believed this is the cause of Noriega's cocaine addiction. Noriega cannot inform anyone because he would have to tell all that he is not macho. Neither the CIA, the Pentagon, the Army, the Navy, or the Marine Corps will admit to any such person as Ferreira existing. The Bureau's most trusted agents within all agencies cannot unearth an iota of information on the General's true purpose or his present mission. Their strong suspicion is that Ferreira is now the top worldwide CIA free agent in charge of all clandestine operations and assassinations. The only current activities of Ferreira, admittedly known in the FBI's 1989 report, was the helping hand he was giving to Francis Marion. This inexplicable father-son relationship developed after the CIA gave the general false information in the hope that Ferreira would put away Francis Marion. The false information was that Francis Marion was attempting to cheat the government of the funds obtained by the Eagle Project, and that Francis Marion was an agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Ferreira soon found out that Francis Marion was an innocent victim who had been used by the agency, just as Ferreira was being used to go after Marion. In response, Ferreira placed almost all the secret funds under Marion's control and withdrew from any and all assignments until, quote, his friend collects all that is due him, close quote. The predictable response of the CIA was to shred any records of General Ferreira from the time that General Ferreira decided to fully support Marion's Kentucky group. But in the meantime, Ferreira found a solution to the Studebaker matter that allowed all to save face, wash the funds, and pay Francis Marion. Quoting the FBI report, it says Marion is within weeks, if not days, of obtaining all of the funds from the CD. Bennett further informs us that all IRS taxes have been forgiven by means of a phony front trust set up as a cover for Marion. The Bureau has tried to investigate this, as well as investigate Marion's present workings, but as in the case of Ferreira, we have met with stone walls. The orders have now come down directly from Justice, stating that both Marion and Ferreira are to be considered untouchables. All inquiries regarding them are to be stopped immediately, as well as all of the documentation in our files shredded. I asked Francis Marion whatever happened to General Ferreira. Marion replied that Ferreira feared assassination after putting the bank accounts in his name and fled to Mexico. While there, he changed his name and went to Switzerland for facial reconstruction. Ferreira is now deceased. Before the death of General Ferreira, I submitted 4 questions to him through Francis Marion. It was an indirect interview. My first question was whether he was present in Dallas when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. He said he was there. My second question was, did the CIA assassinate JFK? He admitted they were involved. My third question was, were you involved? He refused to answer. My fourth question was whether JFK was assassinated because he was bypassing the Federal Reserve by issuing United States notes, or for not supporting the botched CIA overthrow of Castro, or because he planned to pull the military out of Vietnam. He answered, saying those were concerns of the agency, but the primary reason was that Kennedy supported surrendering our country's military armaments and nuclear weapons to the United Nations. I had no idea what he was talking about until I researched the topic. Much to my surprise, that is exactly what JFK sought to do. Proof is in a September 1961 State Department publication, number 7277, titled Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. Check the link in the description below for a free downloadable copy. If you want to receive more videos regarding the top secret FBI report and other classified documents, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.